Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Infirmary, where it's my job every week to dispel and debunk myths in the endurance sports world and to help you get back to more effective training as soon as possible. You might notice if you're watching this on video, slightly different background this time. I'm on vacation on the East Coast, and I had to close the window because of the sounds of the waves outside, which I thought would be a nice background, but turns out it's actually kind of overpowering. So we're just going to get into it. You don't need to hear more about my vacation stuff today, even though it is quite lovely here. And today we're talking about a topic that is really important to me and I hope really important to you. And that's how do we actually select an endurance coach? It's going to be one of the more important decisions that you ever make in your career as an athlete. And it's also really important for the coach that you're going to be working with. A good coach athlete relationship is just like any relationship in your life. It is going to live and die in the quality of the communication that you guys have together. And so you really want to pick well at the beginning of this relationship, just as you would if you were going on a dating app or picking a new business partner, anything like that. You really want to get this decision right. So I urge you to do it deliberately and to do it slowly. And we'll get to that sort of towards the end. I'm going to break a rule in the business community and urge you to slow play your decision when you finally get to that. So let's get into it. So coaches and tutors and teachers have been around for millennia. It's one of the things that we as humans tend to do when we want to figure something out, a new skill. Uh, Educational theory generally tells us that there are few solutions that are going to be as effective as one-to-one personal instruction. So, the biggest example of this is a tutor, where it is just the tutor and the student, and they work together one-on-one. That's one form that coaching might actually take for you. You might just work with one coach. You might be in a group program, something like that, or a team setting. But today, what we're going to talk about is whether or not you even need a coach in the first place, because you might not. Then we're going to figure out what kind of coach is going to work for you and whether or not they fit your goals. And then also like how to make sure that that's the coach that you end up working with. So first we're going to talk about you. Then we are going to talk about them. And then finally, we are going to talk about you and them together, because I think that that is going to be helpful. So when I was looking for a coach, my first coach 20 years ago, the options out there were limited. You pretty much had a few options because things hadn't totally moved online yet. And so there were a few kind of rarefied situations where coaches were working directly with endurance athletes. So maybe it was an institutional setting, like a college or the national team at the Olympic training centers that are scattered around the country. Maybe a small in-person group with maybe 8 to 12 athletes and one coach. So the populations that had direct access to coaches were students, if you're on, your club team or something like that, or elite athletes, if you're at the National Training Center or a daily training environment where it's you and a few other athletes and your coach. Those are really small percentages of the endurance world. And of course, as it changed everything, the internet changed all of that, allowing coaches and athletes of all levels to work together remotely as well in person. The coaching population exploded, which cuts both ways. You now have a huge array of coaches that you can work with and choose from. So you're pretty sure that the perfect coach for you does in fact exist out there. But just like the dating pool with the rise of dating apps, the coaching pool has swollen to the size of an ocean. At the end of this episode, I hope you'll have a clearer idea of what it is that you're looking for exactly in your next coach, and that you have an idea of how you're going to go about locating that person and starting to work with them. But the very first, most important question is, do you even need a coach in the first place? You really want to find out what is primarily important to you in endurance sports, because you may not need a coach. If you want to get as better and as fast as possible in the shortest amount possible, and experience a whole bunch of ancillary benefits as you develop it, that you probably want to coach for that. On the other hand, if improvement is secondary to the other equally awesome aspects of endurance sport, like community, health, and fitness, you might not need a coach. And it's important to not get sucked into this belief that everyone needs a coach or everyone needs to do Ironman. Those are myths. That's not true. So the first thing you're going to do is make a list of what truly fills your cup in endurance sports, not the cup of other people. It's really easy to get pulled into this siren song of thinking that you're always supposed to be getting faster, you're always supposed to be moving up the rankings, you're always supposed to be doing longer and bigger races, but maybe that's not at all what you want. We all have values in our personal and professional lives, and there's no reason that you shouldn't apply some of those values that you have to your sporting career. So jot down a list of values of things that are important to you in the endurance world. Here's a list of ideas that might help you. It's not an exhaustive list, but do you value competition and seeing where you stack up against other athletes? Do you value community, spending quality time with other athletes and teammates? Do you value long-term health? Do you value getting to the top of your peer group, whether that group is local, regional, national, or even international? Do you value things like winning prizes, winning honors, qualifying for bigger races? Is physical improvement and seeing what you can develop into as an athlete something that's really important to you? How about personal development? Triathlon is one of those sports, endurance sports in general, are helpful in terms of giving some adversity to your life that can really help you develop as a person and learn about yourself and take that confidence into the world outside of the sport. Like I said before, this is an incomplete list, but a really good way to figure this out is to just think back to the last time you had a total blast at an event or a workout or a clinic, a lecture, a camp, something like that, where you were just like, oh my gosh, I had a great time. And then take a few minutes and try to figure out what was the value that you have that was really being filled in that situation. So if you are somebody who values competition, maybe you went to a race where it was really competitive and there was a small group of you kind of like fighting it out for those final top placings, and that really spoke to you as an athlete. Or maybe you went to an event and you were just totally stoked on the people that you met and the connections you forged. Maybe community is a big thing for you, and that's something that you're going to want to look out for in a coach that you work with. So if your values in endurance sport orbit things like community, camaraderie, being part of something larger than yourself, but they don't include things like improvement, personal development, all of those things, then, like I just said, you might want to look for a coach who runs a big, vibrant, more like social group, maybe than a team or something like that. Or you might not need a coach at all, and you might just get your stoke out of hanging out with those other people. But like I said before, if any kind of improvement is really important to you and you want to do it as quickly as possible, that's the thing that a coach primarily does, is they help shorten that time frame between when you start and when you achieve the goal. So that's sort of the first third of this show, and it's the part that talks about you. And really, the exercise here is to figure out what you value in endurance sports. So we're not even starting to look for a coach yet, but hopefully, and maybe press pause right now and go off and make that list, and then come on back and we'll move on to part two. Okay, you're back. Them. So, what kind of coach do you need? So, first of all, you the best out of anyone in the world. So, jot down some honest answers to the following questions, or just, write looking for question mark. Do you want or need someone that is going to help keep you motivated and accountable so that you actually complete your training? Are you looking for somebody who is going to dig into your data and totally nerd out and craft this totally individual, bespoke plan that is only for you? Are you looking for somebody that you can just bounce your own training ideas off of? Maybe somebody that's a little bit more of a consultant for a one off project than, a full on manager or coach. Do you need a cheerleader? Do you need somebody to tell you all the time that what you're doing is great? That's totally fine. Do you need a drill sergeant? Do you respond better to somebody like getting in your face and telling you the things that you're not doing well and could improve at? Do you need or want somebody that can help with equipment details, such as like how the different devices and work, how different apps work, somebody who's going to like totally walk you through how to fix a flat tire, talk to you about different bikes, different models, different equipment? Do you need basically an equipment manager? Do you want somebody who can talk to you about the emotional and the intellectual parts of the sport, not just the physical training, not just the equipment, not the racing tactics? Do you want somebody who works with elites? Do you want somebody who works with beginners? If you take some time and figure all of this out now, it is really going to help you avoid making some costly mistakes later, because a bad fit between a coach and an athlete can be difficult to extricate yourself from. It's just like breaking up with somebody, which is never easy, and it sometimes takes longer than you think it's going to take. And in this case, there's additional emotional aspects to it, like you're paying somebody. There's a business relationship that's part of it as well. And unmaking that stuff is a lot harder than making the connection in the first place. So you really, really do want to get this right from the get-go. So I'm going to give you a little example. So myself, I don't really care what level you are. I don't care if you're a beginner or an elite athlete, because I'm going to work with you the way I would work with any athlete, which is a very individual, very personalized, very bespoke manner. But I am not somebody who is going to be your cheerleader or your motivator. You need to come with that fully prepared and present if you and I are going to have a successful time together. I really think that the gold in these events and these processes of getting better, for me, you really need to come in with your own motivation. And so whatever level you are, I'm very, very happy to work with you. I'm very detailed oriented, very data driven. But the athlete that is not going to work well with me is somebody that I'm going to need to be on all the time and be like, hey, did you get to your session? If you can't motivate to get to your session, I'm happy to point you in the direction of some other resources or some things that might be going on for you, where you can address some help. But I know myself at this point that if I have to send a text every day to get you to the pool, eventually, that is not going to be a productive relationship for working with me. So now you know a little bit about me. And when you start talking to coaches, you're going to want to get answers to these questions. Who do they want to work with? Are they somebody who doesn't mind at all sending you a text every day to get you to the pool? Remember that, like, what a coach does or doesn't do is not inherently good or bad. It's just who they are. And so if it's not a good fit between the two of you, just move on. Okay, the next thing that you want to think about is, what do you want to accomplish in the sport next season when you might be working with your new coach? How about 3 seasons from now? How about 5 seasons from now? Good coaches are going to ask you these questions during your first phone call if you're doing a sort of exploratory or informational call. So it's really important that you know where you want to go, because if you don't know where you want to go, no one is going to be able to help you. If you really, really want to qualify for Kona, but you are talking to a coach who mostly helps athletes just enter the sport and get started, it's probably not going to be a good fit. So what you want to do is you want to use that list of values that you generated back in step one, and then identify some goals that come out of those values. So then you have that ready to go when you're ready to actually talk to that coach for the first time. Okay, next up, what are your strengths and limiters? Remember, we're still talking about them because you are wanting to talk to coaches who are going to be able to address your strengths and limiters. So if you know what you're good at and what you struggle with already, then that's going to help them tell you whether or not it's going to be a good fit. So maybe your brain game is already super strong. And then you're probably not going to need that coach who's got the psych degree and specializes in helping athletes bounce back from mental fitness struggles. If you're like a killer on the bike already and you've got it dialed and you understand the process of getting better on the bike, maybe you don't need an Uber biker for a coach, as sexy as that might appear. You really want a list of these strengths and limiters, but the big part here is that you want to look at the limiters. Those are the most powerful tool you're going to have in locating the right coach for you because, like, strengths are great and you want a coach that's going to understand your strengths, and you don't want to waste a coach's ability on something that's already a strength for you. But limiters are the real gold, and limiters are the thing that are going to take you to that next level as an athlete. And so really think about this. What are the things that you have struggled with before? And it's not just physical abilities. Think about mental abilities. Think about emotional abilities. If you're the kind of athlete that, like, whenever anyone tries to give you feedback, you instantly have an answer for that, like, oh no, that's not the story, or oh no, that won't work for me. Look at that, because you're probably actually not going to be coachable if that is your approach to everything. And so this is also a really good chance for you to take a step back and think, what are the ways that I get in my own way in terms of getting better at the sport? Okay. Step 3, part 3, finding your coach. So we've talked about you, we've talked about them, and now we're going to talk about you and them together. The big question is, what kind of connection do you want? If you are looking for an all in-person connection, like you always meet your coach in person at every workout, or some of the workouts, prepare for the price tag to be extremely high. There are certainly coaches out there that do this. But remember, we all need to make a living as well, and we can't scale our individual selves. And so if we have an athlete that's like, yeah, I want to meet with you for a quarter of my workouts, you're going to be paying quite a bit of money for that, and you should prepare that already. So all in person, all remote. And so remote coaching, this is the big question I probably get all the time about what is it that you actually do, because a lot of people think that I'm more like a personal trainer where I meet athletes all the time. And actually, the way that a lot of modern coaches work is it is a hybrid. In my particular model, it is more remote than in person. I will definitely see my athletes in person throughout the year at some events, at some camps. Maybe we do a swim analysis, stuff like that. But mine is a hybrid where it is primarily remote. And so what a remote coach is doing is going to be setting up your workouts, checking in with you after you complete those workouts and asking you questions. How did this go? What happened here? And then, talks to you about it. And some coaches do no phone communication. Some coaches do only phone communication. I do a mix. So I do 2 phone calls a month with athletes, and then a lot of our communication is handled on email, text, and through the coaching app. And every coach is going to be different. It's probably going to be lined out in their prices. So do you want to talk to your coach regularly, or is communicating via text and the training app enough? I've definitely worked with some athletes that are like, I don't need to talk to you on the phone, maybe a few times before we go to a race. But I don't need as much phone conversation. To me, that's a little bit of a red flag. I will always want to work with an athlete that can at least commit to talking once a month, because that is a really, really important thing for me as a coach, that I can see what is going on with the athlete. I can hear their voice, see if they're tired, get a sense of their mood and stress. Those are all things that are really important and are a little harder to pick up via email, text, and messages on a coaching app. Do you want your coach to analyze every single workout you do? Like, do you want them to analyze and open up like your recovery rides and check and make sure that you're doing your recovery rides perfectly? Again, prepare for a coach that is going to analyze every single one of your workouts to be quite a bit more expensive. There's a real undervaluing of coaches' efforts and time out there in the endurance community, I found, because people don't understand, like, just how much time it takes to craft an athlete's plan, keep up with it, modify it, follow up with them, communicate. All of those things take a ton of time. And a lot of your coaches are going to be deeply skilled professional workers. And so their monthly rate, and we'll get into a little later about cost and value, is going to be a reflection of the amount of time that they spend on your plan every month. So again, if you're expecting a coach to review every single workout, expect that coach's fee to be quite a bit higher. Maybe there are coaches that are like, no, I'm only going to answer notifications and workouts that you've got questions about. So it's always important to talk to the coaches about the way that they work. You can find some of it on their websites probably, but that first phone call with that coach is going to be really important for you to figure out expectations, figure out the way that they work, and get all of these questions answered. So it's good to think about them ahead of time. But remember, it is impossible to be all things to all athletes. So a coach that's going to be claiming to be able to do that might not be able to do that. So what you're looking for is basically somebody who occupies and lives in the same training and racing niche as you and likes to communicate in the same way that you like to communicate. Okay, next up, what kind of experience do you value that they have? Some coaches have elite racing backgrounds and some coaches do not, and it is up to you to decide if that is important to you. It is not inherently important in either direction. Remember that just because somebody is or was a good athlete, it does not mean that they are going to be a good coach. In fact, a lot of the time, what I see with formerly elite athletes that are now coaches is all they do is they simply pass on the workouts that they did in their own training, and sort of thinking like, well, this worked for me, it's got to work for everybody. That is a huge red flag. That basically flies in the face of everything we know about education, and training other people, is that everybody is different. And a good coach is going to be able to change their approach based off of what they see from you. Yeah, every coach is going to have some kind of philosophy. At Campfire, the philosophy that I generally run with is that aerobic conditioning is the God statistic, and that is the thing that we are always trying to build more of. Progressive overload is incredibly important, and so you can expect your blocks to kind of progress in terms of volume or intensity as you go over the course of a block and throughout a year. So you're always going to find an underlying philosophy of that coach around training. But it is important to figure out that they can deploy that philosophy in different ways for different athletes. On the other hand, though, coaches that have raced as elites have seen a lot of the endurance world, and they can answer tons and tons of questions about courses, logistics, equipment, so many subjects, because they've really been exposed to a lot of those things during their racing career. And that's not inherent to elites, but they are going to have answered a lot of those questions in their own racing. And so somebody that has that experience might be able to better answer questions about different types of gear or something like that. A good approach is to consider if they've worked with another athlete like you. That's the big one. Regardless of whether they were elite, whether they work with elites or anything like that, but ask them, hey, have you worked with somebody who is like me? And can you tell me what that experience was like? And then the most important question to ask them is if the coach themselves has benefited from the kind of work that they are hoping to pass on to you. And you can ask them to explain that and talk about, what that might have looked like for them. Okay, cost and value, one of the thorniest but probably most important distinctions that you're going to make. A lot of athletes make their decision based on cost and cost alone. Like I have X number of dollars to spend a month. That coach is X dollars. Boom, going with that. And, economic concerns are certainly important, but we also don't want to completely focus on those because if we just focus on cost, we are probably going to miss a lot of the stuff that we've already talked about. So this is one of those things that potential athletes value the most. But remember, cost is just a reflection of the value the coach thinks they are providing you. And cost is what you pay, but value is what you get. The coaching industry these days is pretty much the Wild West in terms of regulation and prices and the way that coaches set their prices, and what coach A gives is going to be wildly different from the way that coach B values their services. So it's really important to not just look at their fee, but you also need to look at their level of engagement, their coaching history, other athletes like you that they've worked with. That can all help you figure out what it is that you're actually going to get. So look at a coach's fee, ask them how many hours a month they are going to be working on your program. If they don't have an answer to that question, that's a red flag. And then work out their hourly rate. Make a list comparing and contrasting the different hourly rates, not just the raw dollars that you're going to spend each month. Because if a coach is charging $200 a month, but the only time that they're spending on your plan is the 20 seconds it takes to apply a Training Peaks plan, and then they never answer any of your comments, you're paying an insanely high hourly rate. If you are working with a coach that charges $500 a month, the way that I do, but they are going to work on your plan between 6 to 8 hours a month, you have a much clearer sense of what that coach's rate is. And you can decide, okay, is, $80 an hour a price that feels right for me? And remember, you should really be asking respectfully a lot of these questions during those intake calls, during those first calls, because a good coach should really be able to tell you how many hours they're going to spend on your plan each month and why their fee might be higher than somebody else's. Maybe that coach that you're talking to has a huge body of experience or success. Maybe they have some specialized ability or training. Maybe they're a nutritionist. Maybe they're a bike fitter. Maybe they have learned some skills that many other coaches don't in terms of power analysis or run gait. Or maybe they are just artificially inflating their rate and expecting you not to ask any questions, which is certainly something that goes on out there. There are a lot of sort of coach mills where, they're going to be coaching 80 to 100 athletes. They're just throwing training plans at you that, you could pick up online for a few dollars and calling it coaching. And that's not really coaching. We're not going to get into AI coaching today, but we're going to dedicate an entire episode to AI quote coaching unquote at a later date. Okay, heading towards wrapping things up here, but here's the rule that I told you at the beginning I was going to break. A lot of coaches at this point have had some sales training. You kind of have to make it in this business in this day and age. And any coach that has had some kind of sales training is going to be trying to close the sale the first time they talk to you. It's just sales 101. If you have somebody on the phone, it is easier to close that sale than somebody that you have not yet talked to. But I am here to tell you, never say yes to a coach during your first call. Not even me. I will probably ask you for the sale that first time, though I'm probably a little less motivated to do it. But remember, again, that these coaches also have to be business people and they have to look out for themselves and the health of the business and everything like that. So they're almost certainly going to ask you for a sale that first time that you talk to them. Unless it feels close to perfect, do not say yes. One-to-one calls are intense. You'll have a lot of emotions bouncing around, excitement, anxiety because you don't want to make the wrong decision, anticipation, which comes with a powerful neurotransmitter, dopamine, which we've all heard a lot about these days. A dislike of disappointing people, and all of this can make making your decision difficult. It can really cloud your judgment. So during that first call, take some great notes, ask some strong questions. You can even tell them at the beginning of the call, hey, I'm not going to make a decision today. Like in a similar way that when you sit down at a sales desk at a car dealership, it is probably a good idea to tell that salesperson that you're not going to buy a car today. Even if you do end up buying a car today, it's a good way to level set the expectations. And this way, you can learn something important. The way that a coach responds to that assertion is going to tell you quite a bit about who they are. If they pressure you or try to force you to make the decision today, they are probably not the person who is going to be looking out for your best interests on and off the race course. And that is who you want as a coach. You really do want somebody who is thinking about you. Again, good coaching is education. And a good educator is going to care deeply about the students that they work with. And if they're really pushing you to close the sale on your first call, that's a really good clue that they're looking out for themselves first and you second. And we all know this, that people who provide great value are generally the ones who are going to be successful. So if they don't pressure you and they're very confident in the value that they generate for their athletes, that is a really good sign. But still, do not say yes during that first call. Take some time, think about the call, let the emotions settle, look at your list, talk to several coaches, like talk to 3 to 5 coaches before you're actually going to make this decision, and then go ahead and make that decision. So I hope this was helpful. Good luck. If you have any questions about this topic, as always, feel free to get in touch. You can email me, chris@campfireendurance.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, always putting up a lot of stuff over there. That's campfire_ over on Instagram, of course, with a little @ in the beginning. And you can find us on the web at campfireendurance.com. August, September, and October are the months that a lot of coaches start filling up. And that's the reason why we're publishing this episode here at the end of August. So you've got some assignment to go off and make your list of values right now so that when you do start talking to that coach, you know exactly what it is that you want and you can really hit the ground running and you can get that coach signed up and committed in the near future. Coaching is awesome and being coached is awesome. I have had a coach my entire triathlon career, and it's really great. I learned so much from them, not just about training and racing, but about life and about the way that they look at the world. And it is a really powerful connection. If you stay with your coach for a long time, other than your spouse and your family, maybe your counselor, your coach is going to be the person that knows you the best. And that is a really powerful place in your life. So in the words of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, choose wisely. Thanks for listening, everybody.